Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and really excited to be bringing you yet another conversation around the topic of cloud native. And today we're going to be talking about networking, more specifically network security and network policies as it relate to Kubernetes. That's our topic, and we have with us today one of the innovators in this space. They built an open source project that has been around since almost the start of Kubernetes, just a little after that. Been around for a while, battle tested, really popular. We're talking to the builders of Project Calico. We're talking to Reza Ramezanpour. I hope I'm getting his second name right.
Yep.
Um, he's from, he's the developer advocate at Tigera, and we're going to be talking about their newest release of Project Calico open source. That's just around the corner. I think they're doing a big announce at the KubeCon in April. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today, and I hope you'll enjoy it. With that, hey Reza, it's great to have you back with us. We spoke early last year, and I think quite a bit has happened since then. How you been? How are things at Tigera?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a while. So everything been great. We've been doing a lot of work to bring a couple of things that we heard from the community that they need. As you mentioned, like Calico has been around since Kubernetes has been around. Actually, the security model or network policies were actually something that we, Tigera, contributed a lot to it. And now that's what you see in like Kubernetes network policies is actually like some of the stuff that we sort of contributed to the project. And we're also working closely with the SIG network foundation to actually add admin network policy and baseline admin network policy to Kubernetes. That being said, most of the community were telling us, well, security is great, but we sort of need to know what is going on in order to secure things. For instance, like you need observability to figure out, oh, is this thing that I'm writing, is this security that I'm writing is actually working? So we took all those pointers from the community, from all the customers that we have, and we sort of came up with this new release of Calico 3.30. That being said, this release is not just observability. There's like a lot in it, but I would say the big chunk or the most the candy of the release would be the dashboard and observability feature. Now, you also asked how I'm doing. Well, I'm doing great. I've been doing stand-ups. I don't know if you remember, but you sort of asked in the like the previous session, like, what do you like to do if you were not doing computers? And I said, well, either being a chef or a stand-up. So I've been doing open mics, and it's been a ride.
Man, are any of them up on YouTube? I should go search you up.
Well, I don't have a special. You cannot find it on YouTube. But if you come to Vancouver, there are clubs that do open mics, and I do like 5 minutes sort of jokes here and there.
Awesome. You know what? Next time you come on the show, how about we give you a 5 minute slot for you to go do stand up on Kubernetes or anything tech or even non-tech related? 5 minutes,
No
just
worries. You just need a disclaimer that this episode is going to be a little bit different.
yeah, I'm gonna put a note and remember that for next time. Um, so it's version 3.30 v3.30, right?
30, yes.
New release. So yeah, you guys have come a long way. Could you trace back kind of briefly the project so far, some of the significant milestones leading up to this release?
So the milestone, not going way back, because again, we've been around a lot. So last release, we added support, like native support for NF tables. Now, if somebody doesn't know NF tables, inside Linux, there is this thing called the networking stack. And you can sort of interact with it with multiple technologies. For instance, IP tables is a framework that can allow you to sort of manipulate that Linux networking stack. You could also use eBPF to take stuff and like prevent them from going to the networking stack from the beginning and just like intercept them or put them in like various places that like require a lot of processing if you're using IP tables to do so. There is a new thing. Well, when I say new, it's been around for like ages, like everything in Linux. It's been around from, I think, kernel 3, which was, I know when, but there's this new framework called NF tables, which allow you to sort of manipulate the Linux networking stack in a more efficient way. So that was one thing that we added to Calico in the previous releases. Logs for security policies. If you have a security policy and you want to know what sort of flows are actually hitting that policy, that was something that we added. Support for Windows, if you have a hybrid sort of environment, that was something that we added. Fun fact, Microsoft Azure uses Calico in order to give you a hybrid cluster. Their Windows nodes are actually using Calico to establish networking and security. Those sort of things.
All right. So yeah, so interesting that you say that, observability is the key aspect, that, the key thing about this release. Tell us a little more about it. What kind of observability improvements are coming in this release, and why do they matter?
Okay, so if you've been working with Calico, you know that we do have a fair bit of observability. Now, when I say observability, it's a big umbrella. A lot of things can fall under it. For instance, we do have metrics and observability for the application. You can already go download Calico and enable those observabilities, figure out if your cluster is doing great or not, if there is an issue with it. Now, the observability that we are talking about it in 3.30 is network observability. If you are familiar with like network and net flows, there's actually a standard, still people use it, which I think it was built by Cisco. And it would give you this sort of information that is like, all right, I saw a packet, and this packet is coming from this source with this source port, going to this destination with this destination port. It is using this protocol, and it has this many bytes, this many bits, these sort of things. So with 3.30, the observability that we're talking about is actually network observability. We're giving you sort of a telescope that allows you to like look into what is actually going on in your environment on a network level and figure out if there's a flow, what is happening to it. Now, we sort of want to separate ourselves with like and like give you a more friendly sort of flow, because anybody can give you a flow that is, as I said, NetFlow is an example. You can already install NetFlow and enable it. Now, to take this further, we added something to this flow logs that we are publishing, which is sort of unique. And this is actually all the policies that are applicable to your flow will be also shown in each of these flows that you will see. So basically, in like one view, you have this information about what are the policies that I'm hitting, what are the source addresses, what are the destinations, is this a private or a public IP, these sort of things. And you can also see the verdict. For instance, if you have a policy that drops a connection, you can actually see it there as like shows you, all right, you went through these policies and this last one dropped it. Or you went through these many policies and this flow is actually accepted.
All right, all right. Kind of seems like there's maybe some overlap with tracing data, open tracing, Jaeger. Would you say there is some overlap, or do you think they serve completely different purposes?
So there is always an overlap. As I said, like best example would be NetFlow. The special sauce that we added to it is the Kubernetes native part, which is the policies, giving you the security information that would be very difficult to figure out. And the idea is you don't need to enable this logging or this sort of notion of what is happening on a cluster level. You can have it either as a cluster level or as like individual pods or individual deployments, which sort of is a good segue to talk about something else, which is sort of additional to this observability, something called staged network policies. Now, everybody can write a network policy, but the problem is when you write a network policy, two things happens. One, Kubernetes will add an implicit deny at the end. And whatever policy you wrote will be what is allowed. So basically, by adding a policy, you just created a default deny. Now, depending on what sort of selector you have, this can be sort of chaotic, to put it at best. Now, the stage network policy will allow you to create a policy that doesn't do any sort of enforcement. It just shows you what is going on, how many packets are going through that policy, what are the flows that are going through that policy, without interrupting anything in your cluster or environment. And the best thing about it is you can write a stage network policy on a namespace level or a cluster level. Like you literally have the whole sort of view in order where to put these stage network policy. And the best part is it's not hitting you, like it's not adding any additional performance bottlenecks on your system.
Wow, interesting. So to do this, is there like a snapshot of your system that Calico maintains? What does it apply? Does it apply these policies to the actual system in production, or is there something like a snapshot?
So to do this, technical level, imagine you create a policy, but instead of giving the policy an action, which would be usually accept, drop or something else, we create a log policy. And that log policy is sort of unique because it's not the old school log that would prompt a lot of information and taking a lot of I/O. So it's just something that's like a placeholder. And every time you hit it, it will tell you, all right, you've seen this. Would you like to know more about what this flow is doing? That being said, if the stage policy that you wrote is the thing that you want, you just can add it to production by changing the name, by changing the kind from stage network policy to a global network policy or a network policy.
Interesting. Okay, neat. Wow. So what else is new apart from, these are big things, observability and stage policies that you were just talking about. And Calico is known to be great at controlling egress and ingress traffic. Are there any new features around that with this release?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So we do have a new thing around ingress. So I don't know if people are following what is happening with Kubernetes because it is changing every day. Now, with the new release of Kubernetes, there is something called Gateway API. Now, Gateway API, again, similar to CNI, similar to Kubernetes networking, it's just a framework. It's a standard that you can do a couple of things with it. Now, Calico 3.30 adds integration with Gateway API, which allows you to have an ingress controller that can operate either at layer 3 or layer 4, depending on what you want to do. There's also, I believe it also accepts DNS. So you can have host names assigned to these ingress tunnels or ingress roads that you create.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, and something else I was reading about, the new release is also that all of this helps with micro-segmentation. Could you explain this concept a bit? What is micro-segmentation, and which of these new features that you talked about actually help with micro-segmentation?
So to better understand like how everything ties together, let's think about like a traditional sort of environment. We had servers, right? One server for a database, one server for a web server. And we sort of used IP addresses or zones, depending on like what year we were trying to secure them. So first we used like subnets and VLANs to like say, all right, these broadcast domains are only for databases. Then we had like firewalls, all right, we create zones. Those zones will have subnets, those like things will be there. So that was basically micro-segmentation in an old sort of environment where you had like physical servers. Now in cloud and cloud native sort of environments where you have Kubernetes, everything is in a host. Like you have pods that are basically processes that are running inside your host. So micro-segmentation here is a little bit different. It's a modern way of doing applying security to these processes. So how you would do it is, for instance, you would look at the observability and create a stage network policy. Now, the stage network policy will, for instance, target your databases or your pods that are running your web application. Now, from this stage network policy and the logs, you can figure out what is going on. Now, in order for these things to work, you would also need some customers, right? Because anybody could run something in isolation and it will be secure. Now, in order to have customers, you would need the gateway API or Calico ingress controller to allow you to have that traffic come into your cluster, go to the services that they want to see, and give them whatever request or whatever response that they need.
All right. Wow. So you've given us a long list of new features that are launching. You've described them in quite some detail. I was wondering if you could show us in action Calico 3.30 in action and what it looks like and what you guys have been building over the past year.
Oh boy. Okay. So just to let you know, this is the time that everything might break because doing a live demo requires gods to bless it. So let's see. Just a second. Let me find the actual demo. Is going to be the observability feature. I'm going to walk you through a scenario that usually happens. It's not something like out of ordinary or an example that you be like, all right, here is the example that you will never see in the live, like in the Word. And this is why you need to like go build this house. It's an actual thing that happens,
Okay.
which requires a little bit of networking knowledge. The idea is when you connect to a server, for instance, when you open a website, there's something called keep live, a TCP connection, because you open a web server. It's usually HTTP or HTTPS. It creates a TCP socket, and that socket will be open for, I don't know, like 5 seconds, 30 seconds, depending on what sort of configuration you have added to your environment or to your application. Now, most of the time, when you are trying to create a security policy, you would secure that server and everything seems to be working. Now, great, it's the Friday, you added the policy, everything seems to be working on your computer, and you go for the vacation. What happens is that socket will be closed and new connections will hit that policy and everything will be dropped. So without knowing, you actually broke your environment, right? So this whole demo that I'm going to show you is going to be around how easy it is to figure out, did I break my cluster or did I actually secure it?
All right. Wow.
All right. That being said, let me. All right. So in this demo, we're going to take a look at Calico Whisker, the new observability feature, which is included in Calico 3.30. And we're going to actually test if it can spot a common mistake when people are trying to create network security policies. Now, for this demo, we do have an application in our cluster. This is a demo app. It basically tries to access the internet, tries to access the core DNS policies, and again tries to access a DNS server directly uh, via the internet, and it also tries to communicate with the Kubernetes API server. Now, each one of these things that I talked about can also be verified here. For instance, if we pause the stream, you can see our web demo, this application, AMP demo app, tried to communicate with core DNS on protocol UDP port 53. So that will be this line here. Okay. Now, in most cases, people try to install a default deny policy. When you install a default deny policy, there is something that happens which always gets overlooked. And it's, as you can see, everything is now denied. So the thing that gets overlooked is we don't take a TCP connection in an account. So here you can see there are denies that are happening. And this is because we're trying to open up this web server. But since it requires another policy to permit it, we cannot actually see the page. This is actually a cached version. I can verify this by refreshing this page. And if I refresh it, nothing comes up. And again, you can see it's being denied. So Whisker tells us, well, maybe you've done something wrong. Well, I can actually go into detail and figure out what is this problem. So if I click on this deny, I can see in the policies that there was a policy enforced, and the policy name is deny app policy. Sounds familiar? Yes, it's because this is the global network policy that we created. So nothing in our cluster can talk to the internet unless it's kubedns, the core DNS pods. So we basically deny denied access to our web server. To fix this issue, what we can do is we can create a policy that allows our web server, the requests to our web servers to flow. So as you can see, now after this new policy, which allows everybody to communicate with the web server, we can now open the web app and we can actually see what is happening. So basically, we isolated this web app or our whole cluster so no one can talk to internet, but things like core DNS policy, core DNS pods, and Kubernetes API server are actually working. And if we pause the stream of flows here, you can see again our web demo is trying to open up a web server. It can't because it's on the public domain, but it can reach port 53. So in a couple of seconds, we could see what Whisker can do for us in an actual environment with an actual scenario.
Yeah. All right. So, we're winding down and almost out of time. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you in closing, what do you see ahead as you look the next year or two? Obviously, you guys have launched a bunch of really cool stuff now. But what do you see on the horizon for the space of network security? What's happening in the space?
So it's sort of funny because everybody was trying to distance themselves from virtual machines. Like, I don't know if you remember, but the whole thing was, oh, containers are not virtual machines.
Mm.
And now, because of a lot of news and a lot of things that have happened to some of the virtualization solutions, everybody is thinking about maybe we should tell Kubernetes to run virtual machines. Like maybe we need to also add security to virtual machines in Kubernetes. By the way, this is something that Calico already can do, but in the horizon, this is what I see in Kubernetes. In
Mm.
terms of what is in the horizon for Calico, well, as I said, we've been doing a lot of community surveys. There's actually a survey right now in our website, so it would be great to get this out. If you guys come to docs.calico.com, docs.tigera.io. At the top, here is the survey. It's a very like short survey. It asks you a couple of questions like, how do you like find Calico? What are the things? Would you like this to be like private, or would you like to share your name with the people? And it's basically like we give you a swag if you let us showcase your name and your opinion about Calico. And by the way, we do not change your opinion in any way. If you say Calico is bad, we will say it. If you say Calico is great, we will say it. So that being said, it's literally like a couple of questions like, how do you find Calico? What are the things that you look forward? What should be added? Now, from this survey, I can tell you in the horizon, more tweaks to the gateway API, because if you're following the Kubernetes space, sort of sidecars and Istio are trying to change. Istio is going to through ambient mesh evolution. So that is something that we also like to implement. The whole gateway API sort of allows us to offer you MTLS with your traffic, which would be our way to implement something like ambient mesh. We have a lot of things to offer in eBPF space. At the moment, as you know, Calico has a pluggable data plane. So you can basically run NF table, eBPF, VPP, whatever data plane that you like. So what I know is in the eBPF side, we're working on netkits, adding more sort of unlocking more performance if you have a higher kernel or if you're using a higher kernel. This is something new that we're adding. There's going to be a lot of addition to the observability gateway. So we don't want to just give you a UI. While you are more than welcome to just install a UI, use it, and change it. Again, Calico is an open source project. You can literally change anything in it. You just come to our GitHub, submit your change, you get some reviews, and ta-da. But we're also allowing you to tap into the APIs and create your own sort of application, your own sort of integration. That is on the horizon. These are the things that comes to the mind.
Awesome. Yeah, that's some really cool stuff. A lot to look forward to. Ambient mesh and eBPF, some really cool things coming up there. We want to, yeah, thanks so much for just sharing all of that with us today, Reza. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And all the best for your release that's coming up in just a few days. Before we let you go, though, just a question to get to know you a bit. I was planning to ask you something on the lines of what's your favorite productivity hack, but considering you brought back, you reminded me that you're interested in stand-up. I'm curious to know what's your favorite source to get material? Where do you get most of your ideas for your jokes, and how do you write them down? Do you record them? Do you just remember them? Tell us a bit about your prep, if you don't mind.
Oh, so my main source is public transport. It just you go like you go on board a bus and you see things that you cannot unsee. Now,
Right.
that being said, the whole idea, the productivity is you just see something that everybody sees, and you sort of look at it a different way. For instance, there is something that called like, don't talk to me because I didn't have my morning coffee. That is a very odd thing. Like, just because you didn't have the coffee, you cannot talk. Coffee doesn't allow you to talk or not. So like looking at things a little bit differently and sort of connecting it to other sort of stuff.
Okay,
That would be the productivity task.
nice, nice. Yeah, cool. Yeah, when you come back next time, how about a short segment of maybe 2 to 3 minutes or whatever? Maybe for in the middle of your demo, when you're setting up stuff, if things go wrong, you like take off and you do a little stand up and then come back to your demo.
100%. But as I said, you need to have a disclaimer because when you're telling jokes, things can happen.
Yeah, no, but if it's 2 minutes, yeah, you can do it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much though for joining us. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and looking forward to meeting up again soon. Take care.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers as well for tuning in. If you enjoyed this chat, head over to softwareplaza.com and catch all of our previous episodes as well. We'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.